Okay, everyone, welcome back to the How to Podcast series. I have a co-host joining me from across the pond from where I am in Canada. Tom Sanderson is here with me, and his podcast, Tom Meets Interesting People. I get to meet interesting Tom. Tom, welcome to the How to Podcast series as my co-host today. How are you?
Oh, thank you for having me here, David. Thank you for extending the invite as well. And yeah, I love the time difference we got because it's like 6 p.m. here. I
Yeah.
imagine it's super early for you. So yeah.
It's fun. And I love your laugh and I love your smile. It's amazing. And for everyone listening at home, Tom is a very generous person because we were supposed to do this a little while ago. My computer took a nap and Tom graciously gave me another opportunity to join again. And here he is. So Tom, thank you for being patient.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Great to have you here. I've really been looking forward to this. I love your podcast, Tom. Talk a little bit about Tom Meets Interesting People. Tell me about the big idea for the show and how it all started.
Yeah, so I really love finding out about how people do things and what's the kind of process behind that. And I grew up when I was a kid. I wasn't watching cartoons growing up as a kid. I was watching, folks in the UK will know these names, Michael Parkinson, Jonathan Ross. I was listening to Terry Wogan. And I remember saying to my teacher when I was like 6 that I want to do interviews. And she's like, that's not a job. Well, look at me now. And yeah, I've all throughout my life I've been doing kind of interviews like that. I spent a little bit of time as a journalist, both in print and radio.
Nice.
After that, then did a few other jobs because of circumstances. Then I went to university and I became enthralled with qualitative research. So normally when we think of science, we think of things being measured in a quantitative manner.
Yeah.
With numbers. I was interested in the words. So, for instance, a social scientist or a psychologist might ask, how sad are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And then I would ask, okay, why are you feeling that sad? Yes. And kind of dive into there. And then £36,000 later and 4 years, I get a degree. And what do I do with my degree? I start a podcast. Because, you know...
That's what we do. Yeah.
Money well spent.
Okay, I love it. So tell me how your podcast is structured, solo hosted, interview based. Talk a little bit about how you decided what you're doing.
Yeah. So it's an interview podcast that every single week I'm going to get a different interesting person to come on the show. I've had everyone from voice actors to nuclear engineers to SWAT team negotiators. At the time of recording, the next guest is going to be a swing metal band. So that's 3 in one go. And yeah, I'm all about kind of how do you do the thing and why do you do the thing? Mm-hmm. If that makes any degree of sense. And I kind of follow a structure where I will have my introduction. I want to find out about the context of our guest. So that's more than just background. It's more than just, oh, I was born in Manchester. I was born in Indiana, in Canada, or wherever. Yeah. It's like, I'm interested in, okay, what were the events that made you say, yes, I want to be a insert profession here? Yeah. And then we dive into their projects. What are the projects that they've done? And then we dive into the process. So how did they go about doing X, Y, and Z?
Interviewing is your superpower. Let's say it out loud. Tell me, what is it about the interview process that is easy for you and what is difficult for you as a host?
Oh, that's a good question. What's easy? Okay, I'll start with what's difficult.
Okay.
That's the easy one. It is so difficult coming up with questions that aren't surface level.
Good.
Surface level questions, so easy to come up with. I can ask anyone where they're from. I can ask anyone what they do. I could ask anyone kind of, oh, what is it that what's your work do? And what does that involve? Anyone can ask that. But trying to ask those questions that actually burrow into what their process is and what their projects are, you can't get a template for that. And anyone who says that they have the ultimate interview template are lying. But I think the easiest thing for me, however, is when I engross myself in the research, because I spend forever doing kind of like research. I like to really deep dive into things. The easiest questions are the questions that I just want to know the answer to.
Yeah.
And it might be something that the guest has said on a previous podcast or a previous interview. It might be something they wrote. And I've been like, okay, I want to know more about X, Y, and Z. That's a really easy question for me to write. Because it's like, oh yeah, I want to know about this thing. And yeah, and then from there, it's working with your guest. And absolutely, because unless you're Jeremy Paxman asking Michael Howard the same question 14 times in a row, these interviews, at least what I want to do, they're a team job. It's teamwork. We're working together, just like we're doing here, where you might have some questions, but we're still working together to make an episode. It's the same thing for my guests.
So, okay, the one thing I like to do pre-interview chats with my guests. And the reason why, there's a couple of reasons. One, I get to hear and see them, which gives me opportunity to see if there's any issues maybe with their recordings. Maybe there's loud noises in the background. Maybe they're meeting me from a cafe, or they're walking down the road or in their car, and there's a lot of noise. I can probably talk about that when I meet them before I hit recording. But then also I get to, one of the questions I like to ask all of my guests in advance is, you're out there doing interviews. You do a lot of interviews. I would love to give you an episode that you haven't done yet. So what have you not talked about, or what have you not gone into depth on that you would like to talk about? Because you've already answered all those questions on your other shows. Let's not repeat that. Let's do something different that's interesting to you. What do you want to talk about on the show?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's interesting, right? Because I never get to talk about this, or I have a new project coming out. I haven't talked about it at all. And what that does is, for my guest, is it's like, I'm going to go on Dave's show and talk about something new. The likelihood of them sharing that show is high because they're talking about something new.
To build on that point as well, even when I approach a guest out of the blue sometimes, and it is so nerve-wracking to cold email, particularly because in British culture, it's not about cold emailing or cold calling. I will tailor that email to them. I'm not going to send the same generic email to every single potential guest. I'm going to look at their profiles. I'm going to be like, for instance, there's a voice actor that I'm not going to mention the name just in case they say no, but I'll be emailing them after we finish recording here. And I know that they've been setting themselves apart by uploading monologues onto TikTok, and doing various things, going from the classics like Shakespeare up to monologues said in movies, monologues said in sort of D&D games. If you're familiar with Critical Role, which is an incredibly popular live stream, using a monologue from that. And I found, oh, wait, he's got a link on what's known as Matchmaker, which is one of the many websites one can use.
So, Tom, talk to the people listening that are thinking about starting their own podcast, and it's going to be interview-based, and they've never done this before like this. Like maybe they've talked to people, or they've done one or two things in the past, but they've never done a podcast that's interview-based. What would you say to them about just the starting process? Because I think the first 5 interviews are probably going to be the hardest to get because you don't have any podcast episodes. So you're reaching out to people and they're like, well, tell me about your podcast. I don't have one because I haven't started yet. You'll be one of my first 5. Well, how do we find those first 5 guests?
To start with, friends and family. You are likely an August Aguilar who was on my show, who will be on my show actually. When I went over to his podcast, he shared this tip. And you are bound to have someone in your friendship circles, someone in your family that really likes the idea of developing something. My first episode was with my younger sister, Ashley Casey Tyrell, who is a voice actor and has just published her first book as well, very recently. So literally a few days ago, from our recording here. So super proud, big bro moment here. Ashley was my first guest. And from there, I was like, okay, this is kind of a viable format. But now I'm going to talk about format as well. And I think you definitely need to at least consider what your format is going to be. Your format can change. It's not set in stone. But don't just start it because you have this kernel of an idea. And I stole this from Ariel. This kernel of an idea. Oh, I'm going to start a podcast. You really do have a think about it. And if you're absolutely certain, yep, this is what I want to do. If you're absolutely certain about the format, whether that be it's a sort of traditional sit down, whether that be a round table, whether that be something slightly more collaborative, there's a billion formats out there. And yeah, from there, once you're absolutely certain this is what you want to do, go for it. Record and record some more and record some more and record some more and keep recording and keep recording. Then have a break. Don't get burnt out.
Yeah.
This is a hobby. Until we get paid, it's a hobby. And keep recording. My first 5 episodes, I'm still in touch with all 5 guests, which I'm absolutely happy about. But if you listen to those 5 and you compare it with episodes I released this week, last week, the week before, they're wildly different. Yeah,
so we're learning as we go, right? I heard somebody say, Tom, you don't have to be perfect to start, but you have to start to be perfect. You have to actually get going. You can't just sit and plan. You actually have to hit that record
to build on that as well. And the reason why I say record is because consistency is pretty much key in this. And that means recording as constantly as you can. Obviously, when your podcast format relies on guests, that's obviously dependent on their schedule too. But try to get a consistency with how you upload. Try to get consistency with how you record. And try to consistently improve just one little thing.
Okay, so what's a practical thing that you did from the beginning that you're still doing today as far as your interviews? I think you talked about research. That's important. Anything else that you do before or during your interviews?
Get yourself organized. I like to use Notion. I use Notion quite a bit. I've got a database in Notion. If you're a Notion fan, you'll know what I'm talking about. I've got a big database in Notion where I have all of my guests sorted out by when I'm recording, when the episode is going to be released, different tags for whether or not they said yes to my offer, whether I want to contact them, and so on and so forth. And then inside there, I've got my questions as well, and I basically turn each Notion page into a kind of mini dossier for me, at least. That's kind of how I do it.
Nice. No, but it's nice to see people's tools and what they're using, what works for them, right? Because it gives us some perspective. And I think that's another thing that new podcasters don't know, maybe, that they could use this tool for podcasting. That's smart.
Notion's quite for me, it's definitely it's a very versatile tool, I think. So I've used it for everything. Something else I wanted to mention as well, and I see this on Reddit all the time, and I want to get your perspective on this, is starting out, if you Google how to podcast, if you Google,
the name of my show,
you'll get Dave's show, but you'll also get lots of other stuff
there you go.
That's not as good as Dave's show.
Oh, now I owe you some money.
I'll give you my bank details. Yeah, if you could just forward it in the morning.
I'll send it to you. I'll send it. Yeah, I will. Yeah.
And there's a lot of information out there, but there's also a lot of people trying to make money from very naive podcasters. Firstly, very naive starting podcasters. You do not need to spend a penny to start a podcast. You do not need to spend a penny to start a podcast. Yep.
I'm clapping.
I clap myself as well.
Well done.
if you want to pay for a decent hosting, okay, I will let you kind of off for that. Lisbon and Buzzsprout, they have good reviews. People do rave by them, but there's also free options. I'm a big fan, and I am on Red Circle. If Red Circle want to sponsor me, please do. Hi. Look, my microphone is red too. Yeah, it's red.
It's red. Yeah. On brand.
There are a ton of free options out there. Check the small print, obviously. Make sure that you still contain the rights to it. There are going to be people who say, buy this £800, £700, £600 Shure SM7B. Buy the... They could say, buy the Rodecaster Pro or whatever it might be.
Right.
You don't need any of that to start. The biggest podcast in Europe, which is Diary of a CEO, hosted by Stephen Butler, I'm a big fan of his, was started on his phone. He was in his closet, surrounded by all his clothes, and he recorded the first several episodes on his phone. Phone microphones are decent. They have to be to function. They work. I think he then upgraded to like a different headset. But now he's got something like however many millions of subscribers. He's got a massive studio that costs £50,000. But he started because he was on his phone. You can start on your phone. If you have a laptop, you're probably slightly better off. Okay, maybe not every laptop is amazing, but you can start with your laptop. To edit, Audacity is free. Audacity is free, and for a long time when I was working on local radio for BBC Radio Lincolnshire, Audacity was used by most of the roving reporters. I was one of them.
Wow.
Because it just works. It is free, it's open source, and it works. A whole ton of plugins.
Yep.
If you want to be serious, upgrade to Reaper. Reaper tends to be one of the big standards in audio. There's also Adobe Audition as well. If you're in the Adobe suite, you've already got that. So if you already got Adobe, just go over to Adobe Audition. You may as well. So hosting is free unless you want to pay for a particular host. Editing is free. Your equipment you already most likely have, unless you currently have a Nokia 3310. If you have a Nokia 3310, can I see it? Because that's a blast from the past. That reminds me. So that's all free. Social media is free. Yes, you are the product, but it's still free. There has never been a time in human history where one person has been able to communicate with so many people and get their message out without being a part of a major organization or without committing some kind of civil unrest. Traditionally, there were the only two options you had. Now we got social media. It's a game. It is a bit of a game. But don't use your social media to just say, I have a new episode. Like, yeah, whatever. Okay. Yeah. So is Ariel. So is David. So is Richard. So has Matt. So has anyone else I can think of. So is Abigail. Yeah. Everyone else. Use your social media to do what it says on the tin. Be social. And yeah, be just like I have sometimes just talked complete random stuff on my podcast Twitter. I've been like, oh, how's everyone doing today? Tag people who are relevant to a conversation that you're having. For instance, I was looking for podcast recommendations. I ended up tagging 4 of my podcast friends. That tweet ended up getting 3,000 impressions. And all it was like,
nice.
I want some new podcast recommendations. In there, then there were like 20 new podcasts that came to the thread. And I think part of that was because I accidentally made something of value. I didn't realize I did this. And I also hate the term making something of value, but it's the best term we have so far. There's got to be a better term. Because I was like, okay, here is a place to find some podcasts. And then people were starting to put their podcasts on there. every now and again, my phone will still go off and be like, someone has replied to that tweet. That tweet, I think, was 2 months ago.
Yeah.
That kind of happens there.
Nice.
You don't have to master every social media.
Right.
Some people are great at Instagram. I'm not one of them. I'm trying to be, but it's not my thing. I love Twitter, even with Elon. I still like Twitter. Twitter is the one I know. Twitter is the one I've been on for however many years. Facebook, I kind of only use that for my business, but I at least claim my page. So I do say sort of focus on one, but do go and claim your handles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Don't do what I did and have a different handle for every account. There was
nice.
Tom.meets.interesting. There was Tom_meets. Then there was meets people, and like I unified it. Unify your social media. It's much easier.
Yeah.
Much easier for you. And collaborate. Podcasting can be really lonely. Yeah. We're standing in our offices, in our studios, with our mic, and there's no one else there. Reach out to people. There are so many podcasters out there, and this is an open invite. If you are new baby podcaster, hello, I'm here. Feel free to message me whenever. Just hit me up on my socials at Tom Meets People. I'll be more than happy to just be like, yeah, hey, because it is lonely. Kind of doing this. If you can get to events, I went to the podcast show in London. That was a really big one.
Good.
A lot of the events, particularly if you're a young podcaster, may have schemes to help you save on the price. For instance, podcast show in London had a thing where under 30s, I think, got like half price tickets, and I'm not quite 31 yet, so I got it. I was very happy about that. But yeah, have a look in your local area. See if there's any kind of events. If you're so inclined, go make one. We need more podcast events, particularly in the UK. Just saying that. Yeah.
And Canada.
And Canada. Yeah, from there, I don't like the term find your niche, but I'd say find what you enjoy and find what works. Don't be afraid to experiment. No one's going to listen to your first 5 episodes. No one is going to listen to them. Just experiment with them. You'll hear, literally, I've been doing an experiment at the time of recording. I've got 2 episodes out of my latest season. And you'll hear the start of those 2 episodes are very, very different from each other. They completely deviate from the format. One has an over-the-top Fafaldi-esque trailer, kind of like, sort of makes Ariel sound like she's going to host The Apprentice or something. And then the one I have with Matt that follows afterwards is very simple and subdued. I'm still experimenting. Yeah. I'm like 35, 40 episodes in on the bank that I've got. I'm still experimenting. Stephen Bartlett, I mentioned in previous, still experimenting. You'll still see changes in the format. Yeah. Even as to last year, his intro changed radically from him speaking and saying, my guest is XYZ, they do this, they do this, they do this, with some B-roll in the background and some dramatic music, to kind of using other people's voice and make this mirage of kind of like, it gets your attention. Yeah, and the people who have cracked it are the people who literally bring the bulk of the content over to the social media. Don't be afraid to share. Your podcast is out there already. Why are you hiding it? Don't hide it. Show it. Don't hide it behind like whatever app you're using for the podcast. Don't hide it behind Spotify. Don't hide it behind Apple Podcasts. Pull out those clips, extract them, throw them on. Audiograms still work. They're still very enjoyable to make. There's a bunch of AI tools out there now. I'm trying Opus.Pro. I'm giving that a go. And that saved a fair bit of effort because it's taken my YouTube videos and made clips of them. I'm like, oh, actually, that's pretty easy. I might actually consider paying for this because it actually works. Of course, nothing can be as good as you actually knowing by instinct what that content should be and what one should go out and what one might perform the best. But I'm also reminded, you mentioned talking about people kind of like wondering, okay, what is a podcast? My biggest supporter, one of my biggest supporters actually, is my old dissertation supervisor at uni, Dr. Liz Gulliford. She is amazing and utterly fantastic. Never listened to a podcast in her life. I tell her I'm making a podcast, and it was like the last thing we did before sort of like I departed uni. And she was very happy for me, and she wished me success. And when I explained what it was, her first thought was like, oh yeah, that's kind of like radio. And she said she wouldn't be surprised if she heard my voice on the radio, and I'll be like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing you've ever said. But there is a lot of pushback I've seen. I'm going to mention YouTube here very briefly. And I kind of get why there is pushback. But with YouTube pushing podcasts right now, I'm not happy with some of their things they want to do from the RSS feed. I'm not going to put my RSS feed into YouTube. I don't like that they're not just fetching, but they're also walling it off. I think they're segregating it from the rest of my stuff. But it made me learn video. And I now know how to edit video to an okay standard. That's given me a skill I can now take to an employer, should I wish. But you don't even have to go that far. You can go as far as you could literally, and there's a whole bunch of tools that do this. Headliner will do it automatically for you. They'll take your episode from the RSS feed. They'll put your artwork on there, and they'll automatically upload it to YouTube. You can automate that thing and forget about the channel. But when you do have that one person who's like, what's a podcast? Yeah, bring them into our little ecosystem, not easy. But most people nowadays, unless they've been living under a rock, know what a YouTube video is. I don't know why I hold on my phone. Know what a YouTube video is. Throw it on there. If you don't care about YouTube, Headliner exists. There's sort of other services as well. Headliner exists. Set it up to go automatically. It will take from your RSS feed. You'll find it online a few hours later. There you go. And it opens up the option for you if you want it in the future.
Yeah, for me, I have a podcast where it's called Living the Next Chapter. I have 240 episodes in 18 months. And I have a limit every month to how many I can upload to my host. And after that, I'm not allowed to upload anymore. So I have more episodes than I have room for on my hosting site. So what I do is, to get around that, is I post to YouTube the audio that will be coming in the future, so that my guest isn't waiting 2, 3, 4 months for their episode to show up on their audio apps. But then I tell my listening audience on all my audio apps, if you want to jump the line and hear what I recorded yesterday, go to YouTube and you can hear my most recent episode. That's going to come out in the future. And I just treat YouTube for me as a Google Drive that people have access to, and the audio's there, the podcast is there, and you can search and find me, and my guest gets the content. I'm not holding it back until my host grants me permission to upload my next episode. So I get all my episodes out right away, and it's just quietly in the background, an extra drive off my computer. In case something ever happens, I can still download my episode. It's all done. And it just lives somewhere else as a free backup drive that anyone can listen to. That's kind of how I'm treating it. And I know I'm not doing it the YouTube way and the right way that all the YouTube gurus want me to. But for me, YouTube is a tool. I'm just using it as a tool.
As is your hosting provider. They're a tool for you to use. As is whatever podcast platform you might be pushing. I know I like to push Good Pods because I've got a decent relationship with the people who run Good Pods. So I pushed that. There's Podopolo, I think that's another one that is kind of a little bit out there. Lisbon's got its own one. Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify. I don't know what's happening to Google Podcasts. I think that's been folded into YouTube now. I think, but yeah, they're all kind of tools that we can use to get our content out there. And it's kind of hilarious because like we have a slight advantage over the YouTubers who are already there. We're moving into their platform now, like en masse. We have the advantage of we've got the RSS feeds as well. A YouTuber who makes solely visual content will not have an RSS feed because of the way kind of YouTube works. So we kind of have that. And it does mean that we do have we can meet people where they are. Some people like to use the default podcast app on their phone. I know when Samsung released theirs, everyone noticed some slight download spikes with that one because how many people have a Samsung phone?
Yep.
Lots. How many people have not bothered changing if you're like on Android? I don't know, you Android or iPhone? Android. Have you bothered changing Google Maps or downloading another navigation app? Nope.
No.
Have you bothered, what else? Downloading another calendar? Nope.
Nope.
Yeah. A lot of people will be there. For me, Samsung, I've got the Samsung podcast app on my phone. Find people where they are. More often than not, they're going to be on the default ones. Don't be scared of them. If you're on Apple Podcast. How many people have downloaded? I'm going to imagine it's probably a minority of people have downloaded an extra app alongside Apple Podcasts because it's there. Meet them halfway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's already there. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good thing for everyone listening is to not just be in one location, because I know that there's people, especially in the US, that are really Apple friendly and they really promote that. You know, follow me on Apple, blah, 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 Apple. Yeah. I've never used an Apple product ever in my life. So every time they say that, I'm like, I can't leave you a review on Apple because I'm not there, but I have a Google Pixel phone. So I'd rather, I'm going to use my app. So, you know, just try to be everywhere. Don't just put yourself in one location and say, that's good enough. Christmas morning or whatever, when it's a presents for your birthday, you want to open every present, not just one.
Yeah.
You want to open them all. So put your podcast everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And that's the advantage that podcasters have got over YouTubers is we've got a lot more flexibility. I don't want to start comparing us to YouTubers because it's two very different kettle of fishes. I think that's the phrase. And two completely different skill sets. What you need to make a good YouTube video is not necessarily what you need to make a good podcast, and what you need to make a good podcast isn't necessarily what you need to make a good YouTube video. I'm learning the difference between the two. I'm experimenting with it. I quite like being in this sort of space where I've got 1 foot in podcast world, 1 foot in YouTube world. I quite like that.
Nice.
That's very comfortable for me because I'm like, okay, brilliant. That means I can have contacts over here in podcast land. I can have contacts over here in YouTube land. And I can appeal to as large of an audience as possible, I think, by finding people where they are. Some people will listen to their podcasts on YouTube. Some won't. Those that don't want to will listen to it elsewhere. So be there.
Yeah. Great. I love that. That's really, really good. And jumping back to, you talked about audiograms. If you're not a fan of audiograms for whatever reason, if it's not, technology is not your friend, or how you don't know how to do it, a very simple thing to do is just grab your phone, hit record, and go, hey guys, I was on with Tom today, and we talked about how the benefits of being on YouTube and podcasting. Episode 10's coming out. Make sure you check it out. Tom shares amazing tips about this. Yeah. And you're done. You're done. 5-10 seconds. You just created content for social media where it's you talking. Again, social, right? Mm-hmm. You're talking to your audience instead of saying, because again, if you have followers on social media, most likely those followers already know you have a podcast and they've already subscribed and the podcast episode's waiting on their phone to listen to because they've already followed you. So you don't have to tell them to go about the episode. Yeah. I already know, Tom, I have your podcast on my phone. I'm as soon as we're done here, I'm going to go listen to your show. So I already know. Exactly. You don't have to tell me, right? So then, what can we say instead of follow me or listen to my episode? What can we say? Give them a little taste of.
And some people find success with trailers. I've been messing around with trailers. I kind of enjoyed the process of. It takes a long time to physically make a trailer, but there genuinely isn't an excuse for giving your stuff away for free. I'm looking. I just literally logged into Headliner right now. Second box, halfway down the page, automatic audiograms. Literally going to do it for you. If you don't want to be precise about it, hit that button. It will do it for you. It will spit out an audiogram. Post it. There you go. Off you go. Manual audiograms, dead easy to do. Just pick the bit you want, either side, and it works. There's another site I was looking at. What else was I looking at? Yeah, Opius as well. I recently discovered that one this morning, literally. That's doing it for you. If you've got YouTube version and you've got face there, a lot of people like to record their calls. Yeah, it'll do it. It is so easy. And I admit I am guilty of not doing this sometimes, having the laziness. But literally, I know there's a lot of talk about AI, but don't begrudge someone who is working 40 hours a week. Who's working 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
The use of an AI to pull out clips from something they have already made.
Right.
To then publish. I put one out today.
Yeah.
It automatically did the captions for me. It was 99% perfect. It got one word wrong that I changed. Because it can't pick up. It struggles with names. It definitely struggles with names and industry terms, but they're super easy to pick up.
Yeah. I
downloaded that. I think 45 seconds it took me to put it over, type something up about this clip because I was there. I edited the episode. I know what this is on about. Yeah, just there isn't an excuse anymore. And you can use the AI to then help you make a calendar. With that, you can schedule posts ahead of time. If you kind of do that, schedule posts, make a calendar, you can kind of be ahead of at least 70% of other podcasters. If you have done a slightly different subject, if you've done, I think it's more than 8 episodes, you're in the top 10%. You did it. And then it just gets smaller and smaller, and it's only the people who have been doing, have been doing like more than 20, 30, 40 episodes and have not gotten the pod fade, which does happen. And maybe that could be a whole different episode of how do you avoid pod fade or how do you deal with pod fade when it comes along. There's another idea for you. You are, because you carried on, you're already in the top 10%. 90% of people bugger up and they just fall by the wayside and they're like, yep, not for me. And if it's not for them, then okay. I respect you for giving it a go and I respect you for saying it's not for you. I wish you all the best. And then for the rest of us, we're like, yeah, we're kind of there. And then that's when the real fun begins. That's when you start making really cool stuff.
Love it.
Which is cool.
Yeah. Okay, Tom, like there's so much, like I know that we can't cover in one episode everything that we want to talk about because we could talk about this for days because we're podcasters and we like to talk. So I'm leaving the door open, Tom, just so you know, leaving the door wide open for you to come back and let's have a round 2 in the future. Because I love how prepared you are.
I don't feel prepared.
I love your podcast. Oh no, you're ready to go. This is amazing. I would love to continue the conversation with you because I think you bring so much insight. And again, I want to support that new podcaster that doesn't have money to put in right now, that other podcasters will tell them that you have to do it one way and one way only. And you're going to spend a lot of money, blah, 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 blah. And they usually have something to sell you as well because they want you to use their link. to buy the thing that they're trying to sell you. I like that you're saying, Tom, you can just come in, you can start with
Yep.
your phone, and you can improve as you go. You can always go
I don't
up.
have them
you can
here.
Always go
my
up.
old headset
Right.
was what I used to start with. It's my gaming headset. It's downstairs. It's kind of started to fall apart now. The strap that goes over my head has snapped because my dog sat on it.
Yeah.
So I'm using these earbuds now, which are actually a lot more comfortable than how it currently is. But yeah, you don't have to spend a penny. Don't spend any money to start your podcast unless you're going pro. But even if you plan to go pro and you're starting from scratch, don't spend any money until you're absolutely certain. Because then you will have had enough time and experience to actually know what you might need.
Right. Smart. And we need more voices in podcasting. And if financially it doesn't make sense for you to have a podcast because you can't afford it, I would hate to know that you have a gift, a message for the world, but you won't do it because you don't have enough money.
Yep. Yes.
That's not what podcasting is about. Podcasting is about giving a voice to everyone, no matter who you are, no matter where you are in the world. Your voice matters, and you're the only you in the entire world. No one can copy you. You can have the same podcast topic as 100 other podcasters, but they can't do your show because you're the only you.
It is a free kind of democracy in podcasting world.
Yeah.
You are free to say what you want to say. I am free to disagree with that. We can maybe find a consensus. Hopefully, I try to find a consensus in most things. But also, just building on that point as well of raising voices, there are enough white guys like me with a podcast. Every white guy's got a podcast now. We're two white guys with a podcast. We are basic. I know. My fellow members of the LGBTQ plus community, we need more of you here.
Nice.
We need Black podcasters.
Yes.
We need Asian podcasters. We need African podcasters. We need Australasian podcasters. We need Chinese podcasters. We need Japanese podcasters. We need podcasters from Brazil. We literally need as many people who are happy to put their voice out there and their perspective as possible to make this podcasting world kind of like as rich and as representative, for want of a better phrase, of this planet that we've got. And I know that sounds a little bit kind of woke, but you know what? It kind of is. We just need people to come sort of together and just be like, you know what? Here's my experience in England. Here's your experience in Africa. Here's your experience in India or wherever it might be. I'm just picking random countries out of the top of my head. Get over here quickly. Just going back on my previous point as well, like wherever you are in the world, get on here. I'm looking now in the UK top charts. We have got top 10 is Joe Rogan, Diary of a CEO, Louis Theroux, Scamander, The Rest is Politics, Shits and Gigs, The Therapy Couch, Help I Sexted My Boss. They're the top ones. One person of color there, Stephen Bartlett. But yeah. And listen to, don't just listen to us white guys. I know I should be advertising my own podcast, but don't just listen to us. Listen to as many people who are not like you as possible.
Thank you. That's exactly what we need. That's a perfect spot to stop too, Tom. I love that. Tom, send everybody to your show. I want people to know about it. I have some guest ideas for you as well, Tom. So tell everybody where they should go, how they should listen to your show. I'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, if you're not already sick of my voice at this moment, my show is Tom Meets Interesting People. You can find me on all of the podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Although I'm most active on Good Pods, if you leave a review on there, I will be very happy. My social media is at Tom Meets People. My YouTube channel is Tom Meets Interesting People, same name as my podcast. And if you want to have everything together in one big hub, I've got a website, www.tommeetsinterestingpeople.com. I update that website with my transcripts as often as I possibly can. Which, so now I'm finding something else we could definitely mention, and that will have my links to everywhere else. And then you can find the format that works best for you. And I think everyone knows how to go on the website now.
It's amazing.
Hopefully.
We'll have links in the show notes for that. Tom, I told you, keeping the door open for you. Please promise me you'll come back and we'll continue the conversation.
I'll do it.
All right.
I'll do it.
Everyone, this is Tom Sanderson from Tom Meets Interesting People, and I have met an interesting person, and his name is Tom, and I'm very proud to have met him. Happy Pride Month, Tom, to everyone in the community.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad to have you here, and can't wait to have you back. It'll be fun.
Let's do it. Thank you for having me, David.